I'd been watching Emily fill her shopping cart for the past 20 minutes, and with every item she tossed in, casually, carelessly, like money was something that grew on trees, I felt that familiar knot tightening in my stomach. We were at Celestial Market, the kind of high end grocery store where they played classical music over the speakers, and the floor tiles gleamed like mirrors. It was tucked into the corner of Westfield Plaza, surrounded by designer boutiques and restaurants where appetizers cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Emily had insisted we come here. Of course she had. She wore ripped jeans and an oversized sweater, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, looking like she'd just rolled out of bed. But she moved through those pristine aisles with the confidence of someone who'd never had to check a price tag in her life. I followed a few steps behind, dressed in dark slacks and a button-down shirt from work, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. "Oh my God, Rachel, look at these." Emily held up a jar of something I couldn't even pronounce. The label was in French, and there was actual gold leaf visible through the glass. "Truffles, we have to get these." "Emily, and this olive oil?" She didn't wait for me to finish, already reaching for a bottle that looked more like a wine decanter. "It's from this tiny village in Tuscany. Can you imagine?" I could imagine. I could imagine the price tag for one thing. $78 for olive oil. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I was trying to remember what Dr. Chen, my therapist, had told me about setting boundaries, about using my voice, about not letting past patterns repeat themselves. The problem was, those patterns had roots that went deep. Emily had come into my life when I was 16 and she was 14. My father had married her mother, Margaret Hartwell, in a ceremony I'd been too upset to fully appreciate at the time. I'd still been grieving my own mother's death, and suddenly there was this new family I was supposed to accept, love, integrate into my life like they'd always been there. Emily had seemed sweet at first, shy even, but that sweetness had a way of curdling when she didn't get what she wanted. The first time she'd asked me to buy her something, we'd been at the mall. She'd wanted a pair of designer sunglasses, $300, and she'd looked at me with those wide, pleading eyes and said she'd forgotten her wallet. She'd pay me back, she promised. She swore. I never saw that money. And the requests kept coming. Coffee here, lunch there, a new dress for a party, concert tickets, textbooks she claimed she desperately needed for school. Each time, she had an excuse. Each time, she promised to pay me back. Each time, I believed her because what else was I supposed to do? She was my stepsister. Family. And Margaret would give me these disappointed looks when I hesitated, like I was being selfish, ungenerous, unwelcoming to this new person in our lives. But worse than the money were the other things. The emotional manipulation. The bullying that my father and Margaret never seemed to see, or chose not to see. I remembered the time I had finally said no. We'd been at a department store, and Emily had wanted a leather jacket that cost more than my monthly car payment. I'd looked at the price tag and felt something inside me rebel. "Emily, I can't afford this," I'd said. The transformation had been instant. Her face had crumpled, tears springing to her eyes like someone had flipped a switch. Her voice had gotten loud, drawing attention from other shoppers. "I can't believe you're being so stingy," she'd sobbed. "You make way more money than me, and you can't even do this one thing? What kind of sister are you?" People had stared. I'd felt my face burn with shame and embarrassment. In the end, I'd bought the jacket just to make her stop crying, just to make the scene end. Another time, I'd tried to bring it up at dinner. We'd been at my father and Margaret's house, and I'd carefully, so carefully, mentioned that maybe Emily should start paying for her own things, or at least paying me back for what I'd covered. Emily's eyes had gone cold, hard. The sweetness had drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "Wow," she'd said, her voice sharp and mocking. "I guess we know where we stand now. I thought you actually cared about me, but I guess I was wrong." Then she turned to Margaret with tears in her eyes, real tears this time, or at least convincing ones, and told her version of events. A version where I'd been cruel and dismissive, where I'd thrown money in her face, where I'd made her feel small and unwanted. Margaret had looked at me with such disappointment. "Rachel, I know this adjustment has been hard for everyone, but Emily is family now. We share what we have with family." My father had just looked uncomfortable and changed the subject. I'd tried talking to Margaret directly once, sitting her down with coffee and attempting to explain the pattern I was seeing, but she dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. Emily's just young, she'd said. She doesn't always think about these things. You're older, more established. It wouldn't hurt you to be more generous. I'd left that conversation feeling gaslit, crazy, like maybe I was making too big a deal out of everything. But the pattern continued. Emily would ask, I would give. She would forget to pay me back. And if I ever tried to say no, there would be tears or tantrums or accusations, followed by Margaret's gentle but firm reminders about family and generosity and not being selfish. So I'd learned to stay quiet, to just pay, to avoid the drama. Until today, I watched Emily add a wheel of aged cheese to the cart. $96, then a bottle of balsamic vinegar that cost more than my electric bill. Artisan crackers, imported chocolate, a jar of honey that apparently came from some rare species of bee on a remote island off the coast of Greece. The cart was nearly full now, a mountain of luxury items that glittered under the store's soft lighting. We passed through the produce section, where individual pieces of fruit wore little stickers with prices that made my stomach turn. Emily selected 3 pairs, $12 each. These will be perfect for the dinner party I'm hosting, she said brightly. You're hosting a dinner party? This was the first I'd heard of it. Yeah, just a few friends from yoga. Nothing fancy. She said this while dropping a $200 bottle of champagne into the cart. Nothing fancy. Right. I thought about my apartment, my one-bedroom place where I carefully meal prepped every Sunday to save money. I thought about my student loans, still hanging over my head like a storm cloud. I thought about how I'd been trying to save for a down payment on a house, how every dollar mattered. And I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my anger, my frustration, my sense of being used. All the times I told myself it was easier to just pay than to cause a scene. Dr. Chen's voice echoed in my head from our last session. You can't control how others behave, Rachel. You can only control your own actions and responses, and you have the right to set boundaries, even if those boundaries upset other people. Emily was at the cosmetics section now, selecting face creams and serums, each one more expensive than the last. Her fingers trailed over the products with proprietary ease, like she owned them already. My skin has been so dry lately, she said, not looking at me. The weather's changing. I need to adjust my routine. She needed, always what she needed. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Not yet. Wait until we get to the register. That's when I'll do it. My heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins like I was preparing for battle. In a way, I suppose I was. We made our way to the front of the store. The checkout area was all polished wood and brass fixtures, designed to make you feel like you were in a luxury hotel rather than paying for groceries. A young woman with perfect makeup smiled as we approached. Did you find everything you were looking for? She asked pleasantly. Everything and more, Emily said with a laugh, beginning to unload the cart. I watched the items pile up on the conveyor belt, the truffles, the olive oil, the cheese, the champagne, the cosmetics. The imported this and artisan that, each one more extravagant than the last. The cashier scanned them one by one, and I watched the total climb on the screen above her head. 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. The numbers kept rising, relentless and horrifying. 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. Emily was scrolling through her phone, completely unconcerned, occasionally humming along to the classical music playing overhead. 15,000, 17,000. Your total is $17,342, the cashier said, her professional smile never wavering. Emily looked up from her phone. She glanced at the screen, then at the bags that were being filled with her purchases, then at me. And there it was, that familiar expression, the slight widening of her eyes, the small, helpless smile, the tilt of her head that was supposed to be endearing. Oh my God, she said, her voice taking on that breathy, apologetic quality I knew so well. Rachel, I completely forgot my wallet. It's back at my apartment. Can you cover this? I'll pay you back as soon as we get home, I swear. The cashier's smile had frozen slightly. Behind us, I could feel other customers waiting, their presence a pressure at my back. This was it. The moment. The choice. I could feel all the old instincts rising up. Pay for it. Avoid the scene. Don't make waves. Keep the peace. Be the bigger person. But something else was rising too. A fury. A sense of absolute doneness that was so overwhelming it almost knocked the breath from my lungs. I smiled at Emily. A real smile, warm and genuine, though I'm sure it didn't reach my eyes. Wait right here, I said. Let me go get the car first. I'll pull it around to make loading these easier. I saw the relief flood Emily's face. Oh, thank you so much. You're the best. I turned and walked away. The automatic doors slid open and the cool mall air hit my face. I could hear Emily behind me saying something to the cashier, probably some explanation about how I'd be right back, how this always happened, how I was so good about covering things. I kept walking, past the fountain in the center of the mall, where children threw pennies and made wishes, past the coffee shop where Emily and I had sat just an hour ago while she'd told me about this amazing store she wanted to check out, past the jewelry store with its glittering displays. My phone started ringing when I was halfway to the parking garage. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. I declined again. I reached my car, a modest sedan that I'd bought used and took meticulous care of. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer magnitude of what I was doing. My phone buzzed with a text, then another, then another. Emily. Rachel, where are you? Emily. The cashier is asking if you're coming back. Emily. Rachel, this isn't funny. I sat in my car and didn't respond. More texts came through. Then a call from Margaret. I watched her name appear on my screen, let it ring through to voicemail. Another text from Emily. I can't believe you would do this to me. Then you're making a scene. Then everyone is staring. Then Mom is calling you. Another call from Margaret. Another voicemail. I started the car and pulled out of the parking space. My phone continued to light up, buzz, ring. The screen was filled with notifications now. Missed calls, angry texts, voice messages piling up. I drove home in silence, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I thought about Emily still standing at that register, probably crying now, making a scene, calling me names to the cashier, to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the victim of a cruel, heartless sister. I thought about Margaret, probably already halfway to the store, ready to swoop in and save her daughter from the consequences of her actions. I thought about all the other times, all the money I'd spent, all the boundaries I'd failed to set, all the times I'd let myself be bullied and manipulated because it was easier than standing up for myself. I thought about Dr. Chen saying, "You teach people how to treat you." When I got home, I turned off my phone. I made myself a cup of tea. Regular tea from a regular grocery store that cost $3 for a box that would last me a month. I sat on my couch in my modest apartment and I breathed. The anger was still there, simmering under my skin. But there was something else too. Something that felt like relief, like lightness, like taking off a heavy coat I'd been wearing for so long I'd forgotten I was carrying the weight. Hours later, when I finally turned my phone back on, there were 53 missed calls and over 100 text messages. From Emily, "You ruined everything." From Emily, "I had to put everything back." From Emily, "The store made me talk to security." From Emily, "Everyone saw." From Emily, "I hate you." From Margaret, "Rachel, I need you to call me immediately." From Margaret, "I don't know what's gotten into you." From Margaret, "Emily is devastated." From Margaret, "How could you be so cruel?" I read through them all with a strange detachment, like I was reading about someone else's life. There were also 3 messages from my father, brief, uncomfortable, asking me to please call, saying we needed to talk. I put the phone down and didn't respond to any of them. The next day, Margaret showed up at my apartment. I saw her car pull into the parking lot from my living room window and considered not answering the door. But that felt cowardly, and I decided I was done with that version of myself. I opened the door before she could knock. "Rachel," her voice was sharp, her face tight with anger barely held in check. "We need to talk about yesterday." "Okay," I said. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, my hand on the frame, blocking entrance. "What you did to Emily was unacceptable, humiliating. She had to put all those items back while people watched and whispered. The store almost called security on her. She should have brought her own money, I said quietly. She forgot her wallet. It was an honest mistake. Was it? Margaret's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means it's not the first time. It's not even the 10th time. Emily has a pattern of conveniently forgetting her wallet whenever we go somewhere, and I have a pattern of enabling that behavior. Enabling? Margaret's voice rose. Your family. Family helps each other. Help is when someone needs support getting through a rough patch, I said. My voice was still calm, though my heart was racing. What Emily does isn't help, it's habit, and it's not my job to fund her lifestyle. Her lifestyle, she wanted to buy groceries. $17,000 worth of luxury items is not groceries, it's extravagance. And if she wants to live extravagantly, she can do it on her own dime. Margaret stared at me like she'd never seen me before. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this version of you, this cold, selfish version, it's not attractive. Rachel. The words were designed to wound, to make me question myself, to trigger that old shame that would make me back down and apologize. But I'd spent too many hours in therapy, too many nights replaying these interactions, too many years swallowing my own feelings to make other people comfortable. I'm not trying to be attractive, I said. I'm trying to be honest. And the honest truth is that Emily has used me as her personal ATM for years, and you've encouraged it by making me feel guilty every time I tried to set a boundary. That ends now. You're breaking this family apart. No, I said softly. I'm just not gluing it together anymore with my money and my silence. Margaret's face flushed red. Your father will hear about this. I'm sure he will, I said. You're welcome to tell him whatever version of events makes you feel better. But my answer isn't going to change. She stood there for a long moment, her jaw working like she was chewing on words she couldn't quite spit out. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car. I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak. The confrontation with Emily came 2 days later. She showed up with Margaret, both of them standing on my doorstep like a united front. Emily's eyes were red-rimmed, her face puffy. She'd clearly been crying, possibly for effect. I can't believe you would embarrass me like that, she said, her voice breaking. In front of all those people, the cashier, other shoppers. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Then you should have brought a way to pay, I said. I forgot my wallet. You always forget your wallet when you're with me. Funny how that works. That's not true. Emily. I met her eyes, held her gaze. How much money do you owe me? She blinked. What? From all the times I've covered things for you. All the times you promised to pay me back. How much? I don't know. I haven't been keeping track. I have, I said. It's $38,467. Over 3 years. That's not counting interest or the emotional cost of being manipulated every time I tried to say no. The number hung in the air between us. Margaret's face had gone pale. That's not possible, Emily said weakly. I can show you the receipts if you'd like. I kept them all. Every coffee, every lunch, every shopping trip, every concert ticket. Every single thing you promised to pay me back for and never did. Emily's tears were coming faster now. I was going to pay you back? When? Because it's been 3 years, Emily. 3 years of excuses and promises and convenient memory loss. This is ridiculous, Margaret cut in. You're both adults. You can work this out without all this drama. I turned to her. You're right. We can work this out. Emily can start by paying me back. Even a payment plan would be fine. $100 a month. Or $50. Anything that shows she's actually trying to take responsibility for what she owes me. Emily's face crumpled. I don't have that kind of money. Then maybe you should stop trying to spend $17,000 on groceries, I said quietly. Those weren't for me. They were for a dinner party. A dinner party you're hosting. With people you're entertaining, using ingredients you can't afford to pay for. I thought you'd cover it. You always cover it. And there it was. The truth, spoken out loud without pretense or manipulation. She'd thought I'd cover it because I always did. Because that was our pattern, because I was reliable, predictable Rachel who would always bail her out. Not anymore, I said. Emily looked at Margaret, clearly waiting for her mother to intervene, to fix this, to make me be reasonable. But Margaret was looking at me with something I'd never seen before. Not quite respect, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Maybe she was doing her own math in her head, her own calculations of all the times she'd watched this play out and never questioned it. I think you two need to work this out yourselves, Margaret said finally. Her voice tired. Emily's mouth fell open. Mom, I'll be in the car. Margaret walked away, leaving Emily standing on my doorstep alone. We looked at each other for a long moment. Without Margaret there to perform for, Emily's tears slowed. Her expression shifted from wounded to calculating. So that's it? She said. You're just going to cut me off? I'm going to stop enabling you, I said. Those are different things. What if I really need something? What if there's an emergency? Then I suggest you build an emergency fund, or get a credit card, or do what the rest of us do, budget and plan ahead. This is because you're jealous, Emily said suddenly, her voice turning sharp. You're jealous that I have a life and friends and things to do, and you're just sad and alone and bitter. The words were designed to cut, to hurt, to make me doubt myself. Old Rachel might have flinched, might have wondered if there was truth in them, but I'd spent too much time in therapy, done too much work on myself, to let those old wounds reopen that easily. If that's what you need to tell yourself, I said, then go ahead. But it doesn't change anything. I'm done being your bank account. Emily stared at me for another moment, then turned and walked away. Her shoulders were stiff with anger, her steps quick and sharp against the concrete. I watched her get into Margaret's car, watched them drive away. Then I closed the door and went back inside my modest apartment with its secondhand furniture and its careful budget and its peace. That night, I sat down and wrote everything out. All of it. The years of manipulation, the patterns, the money, the emotional bullying. I wrote it all down in a long letter that I never intended to send to anyone. It was just for me. A record. A witness to my own experience. When I finished, I felt lighter than I had in years. My father called the next day. His voice was careful, measured, the way he always sounded when he was uncomfortable. Margaret told me what happened, he said. I'm sure she did. She said you humiliated Emily at a store, that you left her there without a way to pay. Emily humiliated herself by assuming I'd pay $17,000 for her shopping trip without asking me first. There was a long silence. Then, $17,000? Yes. Another silence. I could almost hear him processing this, trying to figure out how to navigate between his wife and his daughter. That does seem like a lot, he said finally. It is a lot. It's not the only lot either. I showed Emily the receipts. She owes me over $38,000 from the past 3 years. 38? He stopped. Started again. I didn't know it was that much. I didn't want to make it into a thing, I said. I thought it would just work itself out, but it didn't. It got worse. And Margaret made me feel guilty every time I tried to set a boundary. I'm sure she didn't mean, Dad, I interrupted gently. I love you, but I need you to hear me on this. Emily has been using me, and when I tried to stop it, she and Margaret made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was selfish for not wanting to fund Emily's lifestyle. But I'm not selfish. I'm just done. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, What do you need from me? The question surprised me. I'd expected him to try to smooth things over, to ask me to compromise, to be reasonable, to think about family. I need you to support my decision, I said. I need you to not make me feel guilty for setting boundaries. And I need you to understand that my relationship with Emily is going to be different from now on. Okay, he said. I can do that. It wasn't a full victory. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was more than I'd had before. We talked a little longer about other things, safe things. When we hung up, I felt like something had shifted. Not fixed, maybe, but shifted. Weeks passed. Emily and I didn't speak. Margaret stopped calling. My father checked in occasionally, careful conversations that avoided the central conflict. And slowly, I began to realize something. I hadn't lost anything essential. The people I'd thought I might lose by setting boundaries, Emily, Margaret, they hadn't really been there for me in any meaningful way. What I'd lost was a pattern, a dynamic, a role I'd been playing that had been draining me dry. What I'd gained was harder to quantify, but more valuable. Self respect, agency, the knowledge that I could stand up for myself even when it was uncomfortable, even when it caused conflict, even when people called me selfish or cruel. I'd learned that not every battle needed words. Sometimes action spoke louder than any argument. Sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply walk away. 3 months later, I received a text from Emily. Just 3 words: "I'm sorry." I read it several times, trying to gauge sincerity to predict what might come next. A follow up text came a minute later. "Can we talk?" I thought about it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Yes, but things will be different now." She responded immediately, "I know, I want them to be." We met for coffee. Not at the expensive place Emily liked, but at a regular chain coffee shop where we each paid for our own drinks. She looked different, tired, maybe a little humbled. "I've been in therapy," she said, not looking at me. "Margaret suggested it. Well, insisted on it, really." "That's good," I said carefully. "My therapist, she said I have some patterns I need to work on about money, about relationships, about expectations." Emily's hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "She said I've been taking advantage of you." "Yeah," I said. "You have been." Emily flinched but didn't argue. "I want to pay you back. All of it. I don't have all the money now, but I got a real job. Not just freelance stuff, and I'm going to pay you back, even if it takes years." "Okay," I said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily said, "I'm sorry, for real. Not just because Margaret made me apologize. I'm sorry for how I treated you. For the crying and the guilt trips and all of it. You didn't deserve that." I felt something ease in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." We didn't magically become close after that. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But Emily did start paying me back. $50 a month at first, then 100. She got promoted at her job and the payments increased. And more importantly, she stopped asking me to pay for things. When we went out, she paid her own way. If she couldn't afford something, she didn't buy it. It was such a simple concept, really. But for Emily, it represented a fundamental shift in how she moved through the world. Margaret and I reached a kind of detente. We weren't close, but she stopped making me feel guilty for having boundaries. Maybe she'd done some math of her own. Maybe she'd realized she'd been enabling Emily just as much as I had. Or maybe she just didn't want to lose access to her stepdaughter entirely. Whatever the reason, things settled into a new normal. Different from before, but healthier. I stayed in therapy. I kept working on my boundaries, on recognizing when I was falling into old patterns, on using my voice even when it was uncomfortable. And I learned something important. Not every relationship can be saved, and that's okay. Some relationships are built on unhealthy dynamics. And when you remove those dynamics, there might not be anything left to build on. But with Emily, there was. Underneath the manipulation and the enabling, there was actually the potential for a real relationship. It took work. It took honesty. It took both of us being willing to change. But it was possible. Sometimes at night, I still think about that moment in Celestial Market. Emily's expectant face. The total on the screen. The choice I made. I think about all the times I could have made that choice before. All the years I spent being someone I didn't want to be, just to keep the peace. And I think about Dr. Chen saying, "You teach people how to treat you." Walking away from that register wasn't just about the money. It was about teaching Emily and myself that I was worth more than the role I'd been playing, that I deserved respect, reciprocity, genuine care, that I deserved to take up space in my own life. It wasn't a perfect ending. Real life rarely is. But it was an honest one. And that, I'd learned, was worth far more than any amount of money I could have spent trying to buy peace, acceptance, or love. True peace came from accepting myself. True acceptance came from honoring my own boundaries. And true love, the kind worth having, required mutual respect, honesty, and reciprocity. Everything else was just expensive groceries I couldn't afford to keep buying. Thank you, my loves, for watching until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the newest videos.